So I may have mentioned it a few times recently, but a lot of what I stock in the web shop these days comes from Deadstock sources, which means that it's, anything that comes from the fashion industry that they're no longer using. So it could be stuff that a brand has ordered too much of, or I've also found that sometimes they order like different colorways and then they end up not using one, or anything that might have a slight defect on it. I don't know, a ton of different reasons. Essentially, instead of it going to a landfill, I swoop in and scoop it up and try to resell it to you guys so that you can make something beautiful on your own without it going to waste. These are still beautiful materials. I have definitely said all that already, but one of the first things that I released when I started looking for Deadstock materials was this beautiful embroidered tulle with strawberries and cherries on it. It actually comes from Victoria's Secret. I know just because I found the bras that they were making with it. And so I released this last July and it actually sold out really quickly. And I made a whole video with a tutorial about how I made this incredible bustier using this fabric. Oh, I love it. And then the fabric all sold out before I actually edited the video, so I never released it. So then I found the fabric again and I re-released it at the beginning of May, and I was like, I'm gonna edit the tutorial, it's great, it's super long, it's detailed, and then I lost a bunch of the files and I, changed my whole workflow with making YouTube videos. It's all like such boring details. Anyway, I am here to talk about this bra now. So I did try my best to get the video done in time so that there would still be strawberry lace left by the time I posted the video. But unfortunately it's already sold out, so here is some cat tax. This is my cat Hoagie. She's sleeping and she's so cute. I hope that makes up for it. I'm so sorry. This is like what I love about sewing my own lingerie is that I can make this sort of like extravagant lingerie all for myself, all on my own, completely designed by me. Just like so happy with how it came out. But it took some work for sure. The base of the pattern is the Esplanade bra by Orange Lingerie. It's a strapless bra pattern. You can see I did add straps to it. It's strapless, long line, wired, it's got foam, it's got boning in it, it's got a big hook and eye closure on it. And when I first had the idea to use this pattern and use this fabric and kind of design my perfect, beautiful bustier bra this way, I knew there were a lot of things that I was gonna have to change. So things like the underwire shape, I didn't have exactly the underwires that it called for. The hook and eye closure in the back, it calls for one that is slightly taller than the ones that I carry, so I had to make adjustments for that. I knew that I wanted to add straps just because I didn't really trust that I would be able to get a strapless bra to fit me well enough and feel secure without straps, and I wanted to make it wearable. So I was like, if I add these little like detachable straps, then it's just gonna give me a bit more assurance that it will fit and be wearable. And so those were the main things that I went into the project knowing that I would have to change. But I had never made the Esplanade pattern before, so I did make a test version just to make sure that I was going to get the sizing right, and kind of, if any little things came up that I could change for the final version. And indeed, some things came up. So compared to the test version that I made and what I changed for the final version, there were a couple things that I did still have to edit. And so it was things like the bridge. I needed to make it just like a bit wider, which is a typical alteration that I do, just, the spacing on my chest and all of that. The underwire shape, I didn't quite get it when I made some adjustments going into my test version, and they weren't quite right, so I just had to, just continue altering that for the final version. And luckily, that worked out well. I got the underwires to fit. They kind of lie the way they're supposed to. I'm amazing. And then there were a couple things with altering the back to fit my smaller hook and eye closures, and just also the different elastic sizes that I used. I had to make a few changes. They didn't quite work out with the test version, so that all the seams would line up and kind of flow nicely. And those were the main things. And then the construction itself went through in a pretty nice and straightforward way. I mean, there's a lot of steps involved with a bustier. You have to sew the foam cups and, sew the fabric cups over it. There's, several layers of fabric for each piece. And then there's a bit with like the order of sewing for like the elastic and the channeling and inserting the boning and and like adding the little loops. Actually, that wasn't too hard. They're really just kind of stuck on there. That was a very easy alteration to do. I would say as I was making this, the thing that ended up being the biggest pain in the butt. So I added silicone backed elastic as the underband elastic. I carry this in my shop. It's a very useful material, but it's tricky to sew with. And maybe you guys might have some tips. I have some ideas to maybe help with next time, although I don't really have any plans to use this elastic for maybe a very long time. What's nice about this is it's nice and wide, and I put it at the bottom of this strapless big bustier as just like a way to feel more secure, like not really with like the fit, but just like keeping it in the place where it's meant to sit. And so even though it does have like the plastic boning in the sides, like I just didn't want it to like scrunch and roll up. And for that, it achieves its purpose, but the silicone, so maybe I'll catch it in the light. There's two little skinny silicone stripes on the back of this elastic. What the silicone does is it holds it in place. And now when you are sewing it, it wants to hold and like catch on your sewing machine. So I needed a way to kind of sew over the elastic, but like cover up the silicone. And my brilliant idea was to use masking tape and to tape over the silicone. So then I was sewing over the masking tape, and then I was like, well, I'll just pull the masking tape off when I'm done. That didn't work very well. I used a 3-step zigzag stitch, which is the one where it's like little teeny tiny stitches kind of going back and forth in a zigzag shape. I think if I had used a normal zigzag, it might have been easier to take the masking tape off, but all of those little stitches all going in different directions made it really difficult to pull off. And so a lot of stitches, well, also the masking tape just like ripped in a lot of places. So I had a lot of teeny tiny pieces of masking tape that weren't coming off, or the masking tape kind of caught the stitches themselves because they were so tiny and was kind of like pulling on them. So it really just looks a mess. It was not fun to do. It took a really long time to get all the masking tape off. And so that is not a method that I would recommend if you want to use silicone backed elastic. Another idea that I have is to maybe use like a leather presser foot, because that should help. It's meant to be used with kind of a more like, I don't want to say sticky, but like, leather, it's not as like fluid and flowing as fabric. So maybe that could help. Maybe in the past I had also used tissue paper, which if you order from my shop, you get a piece of tissue paper because I wrap it up in that, wrap up the materials in tissue paper. But the difficulty with that is that it can kind of like slide out of the way. It's very hard to like keep the elastic and fabric aligned, and then also the tissue paper on top of it, and then of course you have to tear it off, so it could lead to the same problem as the masking tape. If any of you guys have any tips for working with silicone-backed elastic, I am all ears. But I mean, despite the trouble that I had with it, I did eventually get all of the masking tape off. The bra functions the way it's supposed to, and it's so cute. And I made it over a year ago, so at this point I hardly even remember the trouble that I went through, the many tedious minutes. I used a tweezer even to like get between all of the tiny little like nooks and try to like peel it off. Actually, I do remember it all too well. But it was all worth it. For this one at least, I'm not doing it again. And so that's what I made with the strawberry embroidered tulle. So maybe it's hard to see, but like the strawberries that aren't ripe match perfectly with the sunrise elastic. So I thought that was a nice little matchy thing without being a very like obvious choice of color. Anyway, you can do whatever you want. So for all of these little changes, I mean, a lot of times when I go into planning a lingerie sewing project, I'm not always looking to make sure that I have every single exact material that they list for making a pattern, like the material recommendations and stuff. I'm kind of just thinking like, okay, this part needs to be a non-stretch fabric. Maybe I'll use a stretch fabric, but I'll line it with something non-stretch. Or this says that it needs 10mm elastic, but I have 15mm, which means I'll just have to add 5mm to the seam allowance here. Like, there's just lots of little things that you can switch and edit and alter here and there, and as long as it's not too extreme and you're just kind of like generally using the same stuff, you can really make these patterns do whatever you want, and you can come out with a fantastic strawberry bustier. So if that seems interesting to you and you would like to get started with sewing your own beautiful lingerie, you can head over to the web shop at smallbobbins.com. Thanks so much for watching, and see you around next time. Bye guys.